Welcome back to the NAmen Podcast, episode 8. My name is Numiii, and I'm going to be your host for this podcast. We have two special guests here. We're coming back from San Francisco World's Finals, so we were going to record a little earlier. We're still recovering, but we're back. We're excited to talk about finals. I'm going to let my friends and my guests introduce themselves, starting with Arsh.
I'm Arsh, enjoying myself right now. No longer Dignitas Arsh because my internship ended, so if that's all you knew me from, I no longer have an identity online. But I will say this is a great experience recording. I get to watch Numiii on camera, dancing while she speaks. It's incredible. She actually is fully dancing on camera. We should start doing video episodes.
Okay, hi. My name is Church of Danny, or Church of Danny on Twitter. I'm the local Danny enjoyer ever since he debuted, and so you could call me Church of Danny, or Church of Kyle, or the COD, the notorious COD, or Call of Duty, or COK.
Which is just as good as COD.
Love the acronyms.
And my name is David Szajnuk. My dog is trying to give me a COVID test right now. But I am a content creator based out of New York City, focused on League of Legends stuff. Twitter handle is dszajnuk. If you can pronounce the name, great. If you can spell it, even better. But I highly doubt you could do either.
They'll be in the description. Don't worry for everyone trying to do the logic
That's not
puzzle.
going to help them.
It's Szajnuk.
They might be able to. Yeah.
Like you're knocking on a door and you're very
Yep.
shy. Szajnuk. So, but yeah, we're all here to talk about San Francisco World's Finals. All four of us were very fortunate enough to attend the event, so we were all there in person. And I'm really excited to be talking about finals. I think the first thing we want to get into is definitely the highlight of it itself, the T1 versus DRX series. We had a banger 5 games with a DRX 3-2 win. So let's just start off there. What do we think about this series?
Yeah, I mean, I thought the series was fucking crazy. I mean, it was game 1, and I was, beforehand, you talk to everybody, and the whole time I was like, T1, 3-0 or 3-1, right? Like, it's no shot, right? Then I watched game 1. What?
Huh? You thought it?
I thought T1 would win 3-0. What?
Let me finish.
They were favorites. What are you talking about? Gaslighting me. So I'm telling everyone.
3-2. I had 3-2 DRX. That was just me.
3-2 DRX.
I talked to 15 different people. I did not get a single person that predicted this going 5 games.
Yeah, no, because it was kind of. I had a bunch of friends who were. I think David, you even were going for DRX, weren't you?
My heart was pulling for DRX. I feel like everybody in the arena's heart was like hoping 5-game series DRX pulls it out. But if you gave everybody there $20 and said you need to put one team, one score on the line, they are not going 5 games and they're not going DRX.
That's what exactly. Like John, who is part of NAmen as well. John literally said the same thing. He was like, "Listen, my heart says DRX, but my mind knows it's T1." And after that game 1, like I'm sitting with a bunch of people, talking to them between the games, whatever. And I'm not very good at the game, but I'm still telling them like, "Hey, like, am I right here? Like, was that just a complete stomp? I think it was just T1 3-0. Like, they played so much better." And everyone's like, "Yeah, absolutely. Like, there's no chance. DRX, it's just over. Like, it's gonna be a really boring World Finals." That was not what happened.
And Arsh was sitting with pro players too, so.
Yeah, I was sitting with some high elo people. I was talking to a bunch of pros because apparently Riot didn't give pro players, LCS players, seats, so they had to figure it out on their own.
Wait, really? I heard some of this, but I didn't hear it as like a blanket statement. I heard it like, oh, I didn't get the seat.
We can actually talk about this like before the series, but like a bunch of people have talked about like the VIP seating and all that being like problematic, and like that's what I heard too. Like,
I know David had uploaded a video about like the $50,000 seat suite, so like the VIP access, which didn't come with just the seat. Obviously, it came with extra perks. And David, if you want to talk a little bit about that video, I didn't realize that the view was very different from what most people expect if you spend $50,000 on that area.
So Ludwig actually just put out his full video about 12 hours ago. And if you want to watch it, it kind of lays throughout the entire process, which speaks to he bought that suite directly through the Chase Center. He did not go through Riot Games because Riot had a short list of content creators that were going to be allowed in and given seats. They obviously got prio over pro players as well. And he wasn't on it. So he contacted the Chase Center. They sold him the box for 15K, or not 15K, 50K, which had 12 seats but 16 tickets. So 4 people could basically hang out in the lounge, and then 12 people could sit in the actual seats. And they were front row, which if you've been to any esports event that's not Call of Duty, because Call of Duty is the one esport that I know that does this, where they put like monitors all throughout the front row. Like they give you a specific way to watch because they don't want you just looking straight up the
Yeah.
entire time.
That's even like that happens at LCS. Like at LCS Studios, there's VIP seats in the front, but anyone who's been more than once will tell you like that is not
It,
where you
You
want to
have to
sit.
clean
it
your neck,
hurts.
yeah.
Exactly.
It
They're
hurts.
they're supposed to be the best because you're closest to the players, but unlike traditional sports, there's no benefit to being closer to the players. You're actually just watching on the screen the entire time.
It's really interesting. I don't know how to tackle it, to be honest, but it does make me sad that like we're kind of beholden to traditional sports venues, which means that we're beholden to their systems of how they deal with ticketing and like value and VIPs and all that. But I mean, like, you know, it was just really weird to me that, like, I mean, Licorice, right? Licorice plays for Golden Guardians. It's their stadium. Golden Guardians had a bunch of stuff that they were able to activate. And we'll talk about that later probably, but like Licorice still had to figure out seats on his own, and he was like way up in the back. Like we were in the stratosphere together. Like, and I was like, dude, like, did you seriously just not get tickets? Like that's crazy. And I don't know. That's just it didn't make sense to me that like
So it's actually not all that crazy. I'm not sure how familiar you guys are with like the traditional sports industry or entertainment in general. But I've worked for 2 different companies now. One is CBS, one is Disney. I can't speak on Disney because I'm currently employed there. But speaking to CBS, one of the things that I always tried to get was Masters tickets, which is arguably one of the hardest tickets in the world to get. And even as an employee who is directly under a SVP that would be able to get him on a moment's notice if he like not those tickets, but tickets in general. If he says a word, he gets them. Masters you couldn't touch.
what is
It's above
Masters?
his. Masters is the biggest golf tournament in the world, held in Augusta, Georgia.
You
every
could
year.
tell all of us are really traditional sports
Sorry,
knowledgeable.
but the point being, even the biggest names that you know, pale in comparison to the political corporate structure that they have set up for the event. We don't know what it is. We don't know what they prio. In this case, it's probably those that are willing to pay the most amount of money, regardless of who they are or where they're from. But that handling that political system is very common beyond just video games. So this isn't an anomaly, despite people thinking that it is.
Yeah, okay, that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. We did want to talk about the series though, and I pulled us off track. I don't know. What was your guys' thoughts, David?
I was going to ask you guys, because were you guys all of the same opinion that after game one, it was done? Because I didn't think that at all.
No, so after game 1 I definitely thought like, oh, this is gonna be T1 like dominated. So I agree with like EG John, right? I did 3-2 DRX as my heart, but logically I said it was 3-2 T1. So after that first game, I was like, oh, like that's it. Like I don't think we can recover. Like DRX can't recover from this. And then as game 2, David's like shaking his head at me as I'm saying this. As game 2 hit, I was like, oh, I think they can do it. And then game 3 and 4, I'm like, oh no, they can do it. And I don't know if it translated well on broadcast since all 4 of us were there in person. But for me, it sounded like at the beginning, it was a T1 crowd. Like it was very loud. And as the games and the series went on, it sounded like a DRX crowd. And I like knowing that feeling, like seeing that progression in front of you was really, really cool. Like that's probably an experience like I'm not gonna forget that.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was incredible.
Did you
Yeah,
guys not watch quarterfinals though?
Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
I watched
DRX.
some of it. Yeah.
Last time I checked, the 2 quarterfinals series, most specifically DRX as well, they got absolutely manhandled in game 1.
mm,
They did.
Yeah.
I do
And
remember that.
every time people thought, okay, the series is done. And then before you knew it, game 5 banger. Same
Yeah.
thing with the semifinals the weekend prior. Game 1 for both series, smashes. Afterwards, close games, all things considered. I was not worried after game 1. Game 2 is always going to be the telling sign. And the second DRX pulled it back in game 2 is like, oh, we're going 5.
See, my
Like I knew
problem was
it was
like
very.
my problem was like in that game one, it wasn't like the other times they were stomped because it was like it felt like their enemy, DRX's opposing team was like just winning the flips that DRX tends to go for with a lot of their picks and a lot of their style. T1 in that first game looked like what T1 was in their JDG series. Like that was that was peak T1. They were playing with macro, they had a good draft, they were responding well. And I was like, I mean, if T1 plays like this the rest of the series, and I maintain that, right? If T1 played and drafted like that for the rest of the series, I don't think DRX gets more than a game. But Church of Danny talked about this on Twitter, where Rigby actually talked about like DRX's ability to like adapt. I don't know if you want to like
Yeah.
explain that.
So actually, EG Rigby did like one English stream before World's Finals, I believe, and he said actually specialty is actually how they communicate and adjust between games. I'd even say it kind of extended to EG because Rigby admitted that he would, I guess, either talk to the coaches or somehow get insight on what they talked about between the games, and he actually modeled EG's between game discussion structure like directly after them. Like he admitted, I just like copied them pretty much, and he said like. And it's kind of very similar to EG actually. If you remember their round one playoffs, in spring, they got like shit stomped by Liquid in the first games, and then had 4 consecutive pretty close games after that, I think. Um, and yeah, and then he also says like EG's not the best of one game, but they were very good at adapting, and that's why he would also call them a best of 5 team. But yeah, so he said like DRX's in-game like between game discussions are so good that even though he predicts T1 to win, he thinks DRX will have take at least one game no matter what because of that kind of X factor that they have. Yeah.
It's actually good to know. I know E.G. Rigby has been doing a lot of streaming in Korean and English, just talking about his thoughts as a coach, NA scene in general, pro player like discussion. So I didn't know that he actually modeled, or at least modeled something very similar to DRX. That actually explains a lot of EG's run throughout LCS for spring and summer. I think I paid attention mainly to EG in summer, so my spring opinion might be a little different, but it seemed like a lot of people didn't realize like EG's power until like leading up to spring finals, like seeing a best of 5. So I do agree with that sentiment. I think EG, and I miss them very much, are a good best of 5 team.
Yeah.
Sometimes it just takes that one thing to flip it, and you never know what it's going to be. Sometimes it's a best of 5 loss where you can look back and say, okay, this, we're isolating these variables that we need to make sure are not problems going forward, and as long as we solve that, we're fine. You just never know when it's going to be. And some
Yeah.
teams are like that. Like G2 2019 reminds me of that same style where it was like, okay, no matter what happened, you had faith that they could adapt in some capacity.
Yeah.
And EG had that same philosophy in LCS. They even mentioned that on broadcast at Worlds as well. And then that carried over to DRX as well. It's just like, no matter how prepared you are, no matter how solved you think you have somebody, once you get on stage, there's factors that you can never bring on, that you can never practice for. And having a team that can adapt is so important and always will be.
Yeah. And that it just kind of makes me think about like the double Halo Blade spot lane with Deft and Beryl, or Beryl's Heimerdinger support, and then for EG it was the human swap lane where Impact played Rise mid and Jojo played Lucian counterpick into GP top, and they won that game when they were down 2-1 to team TL in spring. That's still one of my favorite games of all time, by the way. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I mean that was something that a lot of, I think Western teams in general have had to get that adaptation down. And I mean I could nerd out about draft and all my thoughts on it, but like I will say, like, disregarding the fact that I think T1 egoed a lot and like didn't draft correctly and a lot of those things like that, I think thinking of that like other gear being kicked into, like Kenyan was insane in that World's Finals.
Yeah.
Like, if you're talking about another gear to kick into, like, after solving DRX or on paper, It's like, okay, you know Zeka's going to be a problem. You know Deft will scale. You know Piosik's going to do crazy things. No one talked about Kingen. Like, Kingen was good, but, like, the first 4 names out of your mouth when you're talking about DRX are Zeka, Deft, Beryl, and Piosik. And then
Yeah.
you're like, oh, and Kingen is their top laner.
Yeah,
But
and you're talking
holy
about
shit.
like pre-game discussion, right? Going into finals.
Yeah, like what
Yeah.
people are thinking about this team. And, like, during the series, I'm watching 2 players in the game. You can, like, guess who they are, right? It's Keria and Kingen. The other 8 players in the game are not playing. They're just chilling. A lot of them are making huge mistakes. It's Keria versus Kingen, in my opinion, for games 2 through 5. These players are just absolutely crazy. They are single-handedly winning them games.
That was the one weird thing of watching the series and having some sort of vote or say on the matter afterwards for MVP. It was like, by the time you got to game 5, it was just blatantly apparent which, like, if T1 wins, it's going to be Keria,
gonna be Keria,
no matter
yeah.
what. If DRX wins, it's going to be Kingen, no matter what. And it worked out that way perfectly.
Yeah, and I also love that like part of me was worried like if DRX wins, like Kingan's gonna be the guy that's on the side who's just like, oh, and he kind of happened to be there, kind of like how like last year HLE was at Worlds and then Deft had like a support and people kind of like even forget that he was a support that went to Worlds like I think when I was watching LCK broadcast the next season. So I was kind of worried Kingan might get like, you know, swept under the rug a bit for going into finals. And then he shows up at finals. And then now you have like something super memorable about all 5 players walking out. So like, you know, you won't get the crown effect or whatever people were talking about on Reddit. And I was like super happy for that because it just works out so perfectly for everyone in that team.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys want to talk about Keria thing, but like we can do. I could.
I when I first saw, so for context, there's a shot of when DRX won. Of course, they showed T1 as well with their reaction, and it's kind of this standstill shot of, or like a little zooming in onto Keria, who's like crying on stage, and it's a very emotional moment, not only just for Keria but for T1 in general, right?
Yeah.
I remember thinking when I was in the arena, I'm like, oh, I felt a little uncomfortable personally watching the shot, but then I sat down, I watched it on like YouTube, and then I talked to a couple people, and I was okay with the uncomfortableness. I think just to show like a human emotion of like there's a winner side and then there's a loser side as well. I think this week's episode of Riff Reaction with Travis Gafford, Emily Rand, they talk about this way more than I can for sure.
Plug.
But I didn't mind seeing the emotion. I felt the shot was a little too long just for
Yeah.
like a human
Yeah.
aspect, and I empathized with Keria and T1. But I was okay with it a little longer. I just wish the shot wasn't as long. That's
Yeah.
just personally my opinion.
And I think for me, because there's also personally a bit of a distinction between the 2 shots. So like the first one that it cut to him like right after DX one was like he was like crying, he had his hand on his face, and then there was a second one where I think it went to DRX and then to like Faker owner or whatever, and then it goes back to Keria who's like really having a breakdown now, and you can see his hands like clearly shaking and stuff. And I think that's the one where people kind of really remember was not okay. But then I was watching back a lot of the Worlds promotional tournament, like recaps of finals or recaps of Worlds in general, and they don't include that second shot of like him really shaking. I think that's the same point that Tyler One touched on. Like he was like, yeah, this is what esports is about. It's important to capture it. And then he's talking about the first crying shot. And then he says like, but the second one where he was like shaking, that one was not okay. And yeah, I kind of agree with Tyler on that one.
Honestly, I'm surprised that Tyler One had that take.
Yeah. Well,
I'm
I mean,
not.
he can be a logical human sometimes.
The thing is that Tyler One's also played sports where this type of
Mm.
thing happens. Like,
Yeah.
I'm iffy on the shot. Like the first one, I think is perfectly fine. Everybody agrees upon that. The second one, I agree that I don't think it should have been broadcasted in the way that it was, but I still want that footage. Like that's one of those where like maybe a year or 2 from now, whenever you have some sort of documentary on it, that's a shot that you have and that adds gravity and weight to the moment that when T1, when Keria finally does win his Worlds, I'm not saying if at this point, I'm saying a matter of when.
Yeah.
That is going to be such an important clip and context that just having the first one would not give you.
Yeah.
The second one adds a whole other level of weight to it. That yes, we probably shouldn't have seen it in the moment. It definitely lingered a little bit longer than it probably should have. But I'm glad we have it, despite all the issues that people have, because it's just going to mean so much more now.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like I wasn't on Twitter or like in chat or anything, right? Because I'm like watching it in real life, and like I'm sitting there and they've just won, and like I'm a little distraught because like I feel really bad for Keria even before they start like panning to him, because I'm like, holy shit. Like, in my opinion, Keria's the best player in the world, and he proved that. And like just imagining the weight, I was like, holy fuck. Imagining being the best player in the world and you and everyone knows it, and then you're like, you lose Worlds Finals like that. I was devastated, but I was like, DRX winning was amazing. And the second shot, when that happened, when the controversy happened, like I like out loud said, "Oh fuck you!" I was like, "What is that?" Because right when they like panned around the computer to like, he was like hiding himself with his hand for a bit, and they like panned around the computer and they got like, I don't know, like an extra 2 seconds, and then it cut off, and I'm like, I understand it's run by humans, right? So it's like there'll always be a mistake, and I think that kind of thing won't happen again. But it just felt to me in the moment, and I think that's like where it snapped for everyone else too, like reading it back, where it's like right then you just feel this thing of like, when he hides, it should cut away and it should be like, you sit in that. When it follows him, it feels predatory. And that was like my initial instinct. But like, I mean, you're right. Like, it's incredible emotion, and like seeing that is really important.
Yeah, and I'd also say I like recorded like when DRX got Elder, I took out my phone and leaned it against the glass so it wasn't in my hand and I wouldn't lose it. And then kind of recorded the reactions until the end of the game. And I was like rewatching it with sound, and when the Keria shot came up, I could hear me and my friend being like, "Oh my god!" and then being like not like, "Oh my god, I'm so sad." It was like, "Oh my god, what the fuck?" Like, yeah. And you could hear all the people in the crowd around us also being like, "No!" So
Yeah, it's
yeah.
very visceral, very
Mhm.
viscerally emotional.
I think that goes to show too, like we are fans at supporting these two like teams and these amazing like games that we had, and it kind of gives like this level of empathy to the teams, right? Like we're always here like, oh, who's the best player in the world? Like what's this mechanical like outshot going on? But it just kind of humanizes the two teams, like a win and a loss. And just going back to what David said, like that's important in sports, right? Like you want to see those wins and those losses. It humanizes and creates storylines, and this can be like one of Keria's many storylines we're gonna have in the future. So, um, I don't know if anyone else wants to say anything further on this topic.
Yeah, I would say that if I don't know if everyone else saw, but like probably people who don't spend an excessive amount of time on Twitter, Keria did put out a Instagram post like a few days later, basically saying like, yeah, I let my emotions get the hand of me, and I know like it was basically a very mature answer, like I know I can just grow stronger from this, come back next Worlds, because I think some people were a bit worried initially because he flew back to Korea and then immediately begged Rascal to duo with him and started grinding ranked like the second he got back to Korea. And then I think like a day or two after that incident, then he came out with a long Instagram post. So I think he's definitely okay now. Yeah.
You always have those reactions. I mean, thinking back just to high school golf, which is nowhere near the scale or caliber that they're dealing with here. When you realize that your season is done, when you come so close to that moment, you have generally speaking, you have one of two reactions immediately afterwards. Either A, you want nothing to do with the game or whatever you were just doing for an extended period of time, and you just step away for a bit to either give yourself space to clear your head, to just process what happened, or you have the reverse where people just immediately is like, no, not accept, like I'm just gonna grind back into it and try and make sure that you never let that happen again. His reaction, I don't know why that concerns people, being completely honest. Like that sounds completely normal. Like I don't know why he would apologize for letting his emotions get the best of him. that just shows that you're human. That I'd be worried if you didn't have some sort of reaction. Sure, it was more visceral than most, but some people wear their heart on their sleeves. Like, what's wrong with that?
But like speaking of that, did you guys see the clip of Faker, um, right as they lost and like they all get up? I don't know. I was seeing some shaking heads, but it was like, because it's like juxtaposed. The edit was like juxtaposed with losing when they lost last time in 2017 or whatever. And like Faker's got his head in his hands, and this time it's like, you know, the shot that Colin Youngwolf I think had, that like everyone praised as like the esports photo of the year, where you have Keria with his head in his hands and Faker looking towards him concerned. There's like a video of that from someone I think in the audience, or maybe someone like a Riot person on stage, where Faker gets up and like he's concerned. He looks to like Zeus and Keria and everyone around him first, and then like for 1 second you see him like let it get to him, but then he like steals himself and he's like, and he goes and comforts his teammates, and it's like, I mean, Karia's very mature for like, you know, it gets to him and then he like accepts it and he like moves on, but like people have talked about Faker's leadership in this team, and like, oh my god, that was the moment where I was like, holy shit, he's the leader of this team.
Yeah. And I'd also say, I think Owner was one of the first people to stand up and go comfort Keria. Like he walked over. So he was like pretty calm at first, but then I think I was rewatching some of the footage after he like hugs and like pats Keria, then he kind of starts like tearing up, and then he was like biting his lip really hard when he was walking away, and I was like, yeah, it definitely hit everyone hard. And I think it didn't show Zeus. I think Zeus was also very sad on the camera initially, and then Owner like stood up and gave him a pat, and then he kind of calmed down. Yeah. And it's yeah. It was a little bit hard to see for Owner, because like I used to watch like a lot of like T1 like stream compilation videos, and Owner is like the very loud, like jovial, like kind of troll. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we got a lot of our thoughts out about this T1 DRX series. I honestly, this is the best World Finals ever, question mark, but definitely a series and a match that we're all going to remember for years to come. A lot of stuff lingered that can move on to the next storyline, the next generation. So I'm really excited to see what comes from this Worlds, and how not only these two players, but all the other teams that participated in Worlds, what they'll take for next year. So now that we've gotten the series out of the way, do we want to talk about Fanfest? So, a little context, Riot hosted this Fanfest outside of the Chase Center from Thursday to Saturday. A lot of organizations came out just to sponsor their content. Pro players had meet and greets. I know Travis Gafford did a couple things as well. What did we think about Fanfest, and what events did we go to, and what did we did not like about it?
I thought FanFest was pretty good. I mean, it was better than what I kind of expected. Like, realistically, I was expecting a lot of long lines, which there were, and very little to actually do. But like, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like, you know, you're going to that kind of thing, you're gonna stand in lines, and it's like buying merch, whatever you're doing, you're gonna just end up standing in lines most of the time. At first, I was really thrown off, did not like it at all, but once I started like collecting this like group of friends, people that I know from Twitter, bouncing around, it was actually incredible, because it was like, you could not, especially with how terminally online I am, I couldn't turn more than like half a foot and without seeing someone be like, oh, I know that person, right?
Yeah.
And like literally everywhere around you is all these people that you know, and it's like, yeah, it feels really comfortable. And like, I didn't line up for anything, I didn't do any of the activations really, because I was like, I'm not gonna wait. But I mean, I just walked around talking to people, and that was the best part for me.
Yeah, so I know for me, this was my first, like, I had been to the LCS studio, but this is my first international event kind of thing. So I think it was just really cool being in a space for League of Legends, right? Like, it's not just you and your five group of friends, it's you and like thousands of people in front of a arena here for one thing. You're here to support these teams, meet some pro players, and meet some influencers and content creators on the way. So I thought it was really cool how Riot kind of put together the space where people could like meet other people. Like even if you're going by yourself, I think there was always something to look at and something cool to do. And I really appreciate that. I think that type of content and engagement is so important because it keeps me as a fan invested, and that's a memory I'm going to have for a long period of time. I was working Travis Scafford's his meet and greets and Hotline League as well. So I was working on Friday, but also it was just really cool to have so many people like come up to me and just be like, "Hey, like you're this person I've seen before. You helped me get to finals." And I've had people tell me like, "I've come from Ireland and I'm here because of you," or "Hey, I brought my friends. You helped me and my friends find tickets because of you." So I really liked FanFest not only for the organizations and the stuff I could do there, but just meeting people and having this long impression that I've helped people and people like we're all fans here to celebrate good League of Legends. That's something that's going to stick with me for a really long time. So I really appreciate FanFest for creating that opportunity for us to talk about League for 12 hours.
Yeah, no,
You
like
want to go,
David.
Church?
Church didn't go to
Yeah.
FanFest.
Oh, okay.
Showed up on.
I mean, I personally loved it. Like, same thing. I didn't really wait in any of the lines because I wanted to make it a point to try and like explore San Francisco a little bit more. Like this being in the city meant more to me than just being at the fan fest. I figured I'd let like the fans who don't get any sort of interaction with personalities, with brands, etc. to like you don't need me to congest the lines any further than it already is. I saw a lot of people complain that teams weren't there, which
Oh yeah.
I'm not sure why people were upset with that because like for finals, this is where all of your corporate sponsors are getting the absolute most out of the dollars that they're paying for engagement. So it's always going to be centered around them. Like even Team Liquid being there was in partnership with Verizon. It was not just Team Liquid.
Well,
So it's like
the TL came on their own. And TL is sponsored by Verizon. It wasn't Verizon going there. Like the orgs were offered. There were 3 org positions open that Riot gave. TL took one of those. Golden Guardians got the other, and no one took the third because of a back end thing. But like the TL came on their own. It's just I think
okay,
people don't understand like that.
space.
Yeah, that like there's space problems, but also, I mean, I think I can talk about this. Like I'm not gonna say the name of the org, but there was one org that planned to be at finals and couldn't come because they had wanted to bring players and none of their players wanted to show up. So it was like they were kind of just stuck with like okay, well, it doesn't make sense to show up to finals if we don't have any players to activate with, which like this I know of happening. That's where there were only 2 orgs there. And for people like, oh, like you could activate off site, absolutely. And I think that orgs should have, but like pushing them to do that at Worlds Finals is a lot harder than like, when we saw that, like CLG did really great with that in New York, right? And like that's where you're gonna have fans coming in for like 2 weeks straight, and I feel like activating there is really important. Whereas at Worlds Finals, you have a lot of international fans. You have people there for these Korean teams, specifically Korean teams this time, but like could be Korean Chinese teams. Which is why I personally was super appalled that there was no like T1 booth, no DRX booth. I understand it's hard to get together, but like how many people, like I would have bought a T1 hoodie or a T1 jersey or something if that was there. Like I would have.
Yeah. That's the one thing I will say. Like, it should be guaranteed that the teams at finals have some sort of booth.
It should be
Like that.
forced. It should be required.
I mean, I agree. I'm sure some owners will wouldn't like that statement, but like, I don't understand why, like you said, T1 DRX aren't there for group stage and all the others. I get it. Like, if you're gonna allow one, you kind of have to allow all, and it gets a little bit tricky with how you distinguish that. I'm not sure for Atlanta if any of the teams were down there had any boosts there, but yeah, for finals, there's zero reason why T1 couldn't have just like bought out any sort of free space for like 2 days as like a pop-up store and sold out everything. Like
Yeah.
it
Bro,
blows my mind that that's
they
not
could
part
have
of your
brought a
plan.
truck. Lean into the meme or something. Like get a food truck, convert it, like just fill it with clothes and sell it out of the front. Like there was a road right there. Like I would have gone and done that. Like that's fine. Like
I
put
would
in
have bought
some
like a
effort. I don't know.
I would have
Like
bought it like a DRX jersey like the minute they won, right? Like if they were I know like most things were like closed
Yeah.
after
yeah,
finals because the finals ended
it
at
was
around 10 to
11.
11 p.m.
It was
PST.
late.
But like if I saw a DRX truck like or a DRX merch booth outside the arena, like I would have bought a jersey instantly, like riding on the high of this momentous like win. But I was also disappointed that T1 and DRX did not have a booth. I think the line for that would have been insane. Like, and I think so many people would have bought merch. You're here for these two teams. You want to
Yeah.
have a souvenir for it.
They 100% would have waited any amount of time to be in that T1 line. People were going, I don't know if you saw, but they were giving away T1 jerseys at the Red Bull
I did
one.
not see this.
I forget what challenge they were doing, but basically you had to go in, and if you had like a certain time or something like that, you
Yeah, it was like you 1v1 and you have to like have the fastest 1v1, like you kill someone the fastest.
yeah, and you could win Red Bull jerseys. So that line was not the longest. The longest was obviously like the fan meet and greets for the
Yeah,
most
the
part.
TL.
But that line was also considerably long. The second they announced anything T1, people just started running over. But other than when like, Prime was also giving away like 14,000 RP
Yeah.
to individuals,
Oh.
which is nuts.
But like I thought that it was like even in the venue, right? Like just for context, for people who didn't go, like Chase Center has a decent amount of space like when you're going up to your seats. If you're sitting up top, if you're sitting at the, in the nice seats, then not necessarily as much like space that you go through, but like there's a lot of open area, so they were actually selling merch and like all that stuff inside the venue as well.
World's merch.
Huh?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
World's
World
merch.
Riot merch, World merch. So like there was like Zaya figurines, LeBlanc figurines and stuff that they were selling in the merch booth outside, merch store outside, and they were selling them in like smaller stores inside. You just need like 3 dudes to do that for like each team. You can like bring in a mobile like pop-up stand thing, just have the boxes behind the thing and just sell them. Like just coming out of game 2, for example, right? Or like whatever, that game, like insane game 3 where you're like, oh my god, DRX is actually pulling back. Like this is insane, right? And in that game 3, game 4 area where it's like the games aren't over yet, no one's going outside, you could just walk out, buy a DRX jersey, T1 jersey. Like this feels super easy to me. It's like it's not like you're having to go outside. They're not bringing a truck or anything. Just bring a box and a dude. You don't even like. I don't know.
That's the one thing that has bugged me until the end of time is how exclusive teams feel with their jerseys. That doesn't make sense to me.
Oh yeah.
Like, and I'll get on 100 Thieves for that specifically as a fan of theirs. Like, there is zero excuse why you should not have your jersey available full time all year round. Like, that's just common sense, number one, in my opinion. Like, I get you want to be the luxury apparel line. You want to have things that increase in demand because of limited quantity. Nah. Like,
Shouldn't be your
there
jerseys.
should be zero reason
Yeah.
why if a team is playing on a day, you cannot buy their jersey from the spot that you are watching the game itself. That
And
should
that
be
maybe
like,
one day is a goal for like LCS studios as well, which I think maybe is a little far off, but like World's Finals is the place to start doing that. Like, come on.
Yeah. I mean, I bet they probably have to also jump through a lot of like legal hoops for like, being a vendor on certain grounds or whatever. But yeah, I didn't go to FanFest, but I would also agree the space that I saw that I think it was hosted in was pretty small. Considering like people were talking about 3-hour long lines, I was like, oh, that's gonna be stuffed. But yeah, I think also T1 did a small pop-up event. When T1 was boot camping in LA for like a week or two before they headed over to New York. I
shocking.
think yeah, they had a pop-up booth with they did a signing, like they announced it 3 hours before and said, hey, anyone in the area, just like come on over on their T1 LOL Twitter. And they were had jerseys that you can buy, and then you went down the line of all the players and got it signed.
I
Yeah.
remember that tweet and thinking it was weird because someone had mentioned it or messaged me saying, "Hey, T1 is doing something in LA," and I was like, "This is kind of odd because this is a last minute announcement. Group is going to New York or was in New York at the time." And I was like, "Why wasn't this announced at least a week, like a couple days
It was
before? Why
it was
was this a
announced
1 day
it was
announcement?"
announced like a few days before, but like
Okay.
it like
I don't.
popped off. Like I got notified of it like the day before, like
Mhm.
like 25, 26 hours before. Like someone told me like, hey, T1's doing this tomorrow. I don't know if it was public by then, it probably was, but yeah, I mean, that's what I thought. Where it's like, if you're in LA and you're doing all this content stuff, and you have the ability to organize this last minute style pop-up thing, which is like fun for your fans that are local to the area, you can do the same thing in SF and in New York. And I was expecting them to continue that trend because they'd done it in LA, and it seemed that they just run out of steam on that idea, and it's like, why?
Yeah. And yeah, I was just gonna say that because really because like that shows T1 has experience, but also I don't think DRX they're definitely not a big org, so and they're like a completely Korean org versus like T1 is NA owned. So I think I wouldn't have really expected DRX to be really able to do much just because of their inexperience.
I can't say I agree with that though, because it's like if North America made it to finals next year in Korea,
Oh yeah.
I don't care what team we have, I'm finding a way to pitch a tent in a park somewhere nearby and just start selling shit immediately. I get there are language and cultural barriers, but we have enough people within Riot alone that these teams could contact and reach out to try and figure out a way. If you truly care, you're going to make it happen. That's how I see it. Maybe I'm wrong in that philosophy. Maybe there are more loopholes that they need to jump through than I'm giving them credit for. But if I'm an owner, if I'm in Joe Marsh's shoes, there's not a single hurdle I'm not like cramming my finger through to try and just inch a way in.
Yeah, okay. So as an owner, Dave would cram his finger into as many holes as he could.
I realized halfway through how bad that analogy was getting.
The analogy was breaking down a bit, but no, but I follow you. I think like if it was an NA org in Korea, it might be a little bit different, because like you wouldn't expect there to be that many, I don't know, Ninja Turtles fans in Korea.
Stop.
But
We won't talk about that.
but like here,
Not many in NA either, but
okay, but like there are a lot of T1 fans in America, right? Like there are a lot. Like maybe as DRX you don't know because you're like you haven't done this yet. At World's Finals you're like, oh shit, maybe we don't pull this off, maybe we have no fans. But after game 3, you could have sold anyone a DRX jersey for $1,000. Like game 3, game 4, like you can sell anyone a DRX jersey. But like T1 should have known, and that's the standard I hold it to, where it's like there's definitely room for improvement, because even though this was my first international like big event, it was still had all these things where I'm like, I want to improve that, and that was something where I was like, that's so easy to fix.
Yeah, no, I agree. Fanfest was a lot of fun. I think the fan experience, some of it could be improved a little bit, but overall, I think for those who went, it was pretty fun. I thoroughly enjoyed myself walking around and seeing all the booths and stuff. But yeah, our next topic and something to like wind us down a little bit. What do you think was the most memorable moment of Worlds for you? So we're all a little biased because we went to finals, but I know David here actually went to groups and quarters question mark. And that was in New York. So let's just kind of go around and say what our favorite moment of Worlds was just this last month and a half for everyone.
I'll
I
let you
can
guys go first.
Arsh, do you want to go first?
I'm trying to think.
I can go
Probably,
first.
yeah,
Or
you go first.
yes, I can go first. Definitely the most memorable experience, and I kind of teased it earlier, was just how many people went up to me and said that I impacted their experience, and not just in person, but I got a lot of messages over the course of the month and a half saying, because of you, like I'm traveling to New York for the first time. I'm finally exploring this area. I've never been to a live League of Legends event. I can't believe I'm in groups. A lot of people were like, because of you, like I saw the CLG meetup and like I wanted to go meet like Telefox, for example. Like it was really heartwarming for me throughout this whole world, specifically having so many people reach out to me and say that I helped them find something or helped them go to their first League of Legends event. And that really warms my heart since I don't consider myself a person of the space or an industry person. I'm honestly just a LCS super fan. But I thought it was really cool to see that like because of some silly little Twitter threads I did, or just talking to people and being hyper aware of the meetups and events that were happening, just I helped make someone's experience. And seeing that in front of me at finals with the amount of people walking up to me saying that I helped them get there was not something I had considered until that moment. So I think the most memorable portion of Worlds for me was just the amount of people telling me that I helped them in some way. And that it keeps me motivated and it keeps me really excited to see what I can do in esports in the future. So thank you for everyone who took a picture with me and talked to me. I hope I wasn't screaming in your face. I felt like I was very loud when I talked to people.
You
Oh,
were.
you were
You were definitely
tipsy.
very loud.
When I met Church of Danny, I think I was after game 3. I think I told them, I was like, hey, like, I'm having a good time and I'm a little out of it right now because of the games are so long, but it was just
I
really nice
drank.
to meet you.
Yeah.
That's the only reason you were out of it.
Yeah, that was the only reason I was out of it
The
after
only
game
reason.
3 and game 4.
Only reason.
You were
But it
like
was really nice
skating
meeting
around
them.
everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it was,
like and
go
then
ahead.
and you're like, by the way, I'm a little tipsy, and then you started talking, and I was like, I see. But I think you also got like shots with the EG CEO, Nicole, right?
I met Nicole. I didn't do it. I didn't take shots with her, but I want to blame Kangas for this, by the way. I blame him for that aspect, but it was really nice meeting Church of Danny in person. I remember thinking to myself they were really sweet. So,
No, I think you're really sweet too. Yeah.
But yeah,
Oh,
I think okay, my memorable moment I'll steal from Numiii, just because I this was so funny. We were like, so Numiii got recognized a bunch, like constantly, and we were with like Sovix and some other people who were also getting recognized a lot. So we were just kind of chilling, like waiting. They were like taking pictures and stuff, and then someone walks out of the crowd, beelines towards us, and I'm like, oh, okay, he must like recognize Numiii or Sovix or some of these other people, right? Goes pushes through everyone, looks right at me and goes, "Are you Dignitas Arsh?" And I was like,
wait, really?
"Yeah." No, you were like taking a picture, and I was like, "Yeah." I was like confused. I was like, "Do I know this person?" And he was like, "Dude, I love your Twitter." And then he walked away, and I was like, "What an insane experience!" I was like, "Holy shit!" If you are listening to this, please DM me.
he was
It
probably
is
really nervous.
so funny.
Yeah,
I was,
Arsh with his one fan on the
dude,
internet,
it was
his
because
loyal fan.
every time like I would meet people and it's like these people that I've like talked to a bunch, interacted with, whatever. And I like randomly end up in conversations with these people that I like looked up to forever or would think are super cool pro players or whatever. Um, and like if I introduce myself, like they know who I am because we've like talked before, most of them. But I have to introduce myself because who would recognize me based on my face? I don't like post myself or anything, right? The fact that someone saw me and they were like, "That's him, that's the guy," I was like, "That's so funny." I don't know. That was like that peaked everything World's Finals for me, and then I was like, my friends were like, "Do you pay that guy?" Or was that like a bribery situation? It was so funny.
Yeah. Or do you want to go, David?
You can go ahead if you got one.
Oh, okay. Yeah, he's formulating his thoughts. So yeah, I think for me, I didn't sit with Arsh and Numi, and I wasn't with them the night before for the Fanfest or like the CLG bar or hotline leave like or whatever. I flew in the morning of, and um I lived in NorCal for 3 months, and I visited SF many times with my family. So, um, I just kind of liked the city, so I spent like the whole afternoon walking around just like cafes and shops and stuff, and didn't go to FanFest. But yeah, I was with Yosara most of the night. She's a mod for Spica, and you've probably seen her everywhere, in like Spica or Tacticals chat. Um, and yeah, I think the most memorable was probably like game 4 and 5. Because we were like trying to sit together, but then the like not the cops, but like the the
Sort
people
of
who
the venue staff, venue
yeah,
staff.
the cops. The cops were like, did you like? I'm checking your seat tickets. If you don't sit here, you're not allowed to sit here.
Oh
So
wait,
they
really?
kicked us out, and we were like trying to rejoin up with each other after every game, and we would sit in a different place. And then finally, for game 4 and 5, we sat together in one place, and it was like a really good crowd. Like actually, my original seat is like row 6 or something. It was like pretty good, but the crowd around with me was like completely dead. So when I moved up to game 4 or 5, we were with a really good crowd, like a giant group of like college student friends that were taking up like 3 rows and cheering together.
Oh
And
wow.
yeah, like just during the Gumiusi Baron steal was like the single most
Which
like
one?
everyone jumped up and all at once everyone just started screaming, and like that was like holy cow. I'm never going to have like that like oh, like that, ooh, like being surrounded by like 200 people all getting up and like screaming about the same, like a very specific feeling of having your ADC snipe Baron from a losing position that like everyone can relate to because they play League.
My ADCs are
That
bad.
was
I can't
like
relate.
yeah, but it was like that was like such an experience that I don't think is like replicable at like any other concert or like movie premiere, whatever. That's yeah, gonna stick with me forever.
Before I say my actual thing, I do want to say to everybody that did come up and take photos with me or said that you got into the LCS or Worlds because of any content that I've put out, thank you. It means a lot, and I know I don't know how to word that feeling very well. Just know that I am appreciative of those moments. By far and away, my like the thing that I just look back on and just kind of get sad about that it's gone is just having League of Legends in my hometown for 3 weeks. It's between watching the games, I got to go to my first ever red carpet event with Riot when they renewed the MasterCard partnership, which
Oh
was
yeah.
insane, absolutely insane. I got to have conversations with John Needham, with Nas, with everybody in the League of Legends ecosystem for like 5-10 minutes a piece. Met Degon, who ended up helping me out with a Red Bull thing a few days later. Like everybody that I met there was incredible, but it's just one of those where like you got off work at 5, or in my case, I was actually working from Madison Square Garden because luckily they gave press a table to work from. So I was taking business meetings for Disney while at MSG for the event.
I did not know that. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I was working the first 2 or 3 games of group stage, and then would
Wow.
be done with work and could just enjoy the games and do everything else. When the final day ended of quarterfinals, and I was walking home, and I got to the last block before getting to our apartment building, and I just broke down and
Oh,
cried, just
Oh.
sobbed for 20 minutes, and just came back, and my wife just held me for like 10 minutes because
Oh.
it was like it's one of those things that like I have been waiting for this moment for such a long period of time, and I didn't want to see it leave, and I still don't, and it's still shit. I'm tearing up now just
Oh.
talking about it, but it's like I want this shit consistently in my life. I want everybody in the world to be able to experience what we not only experienced in finals, but those of us in New York got for an extended period of time, Atlanta got for a weekend. I want us to be able to have those moments consistently because they are some of the best feelings in the world that you cannot replicate online. No amount of Discord watch parties, no amount of watch parties virtually or anything like that can ever give you the feeling of being around a couple thousand people that all are there for the same reason that you are. Undescribable, unmatchable. Like that's something that I hope we all get at some point.
yeah. I think
No. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, no, it's I was just say something quick is me, Arsh and Numiii probably already take that experience way too for granted because we're LA locals.
Yeah, screw you
but-
guys for being LA.
Honestly,
Yeah.
it's
You get
already
all the
started
good shit.
Week 7 of summer is when I started going to the studio. I am a little exempt from this. Like, I am still brand new.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been like at all that much. I mean, I've been more than like probably most people who go to LCS have been, just because in like the 3 months that I've been here, I've like gotten way more than I probably should. But like, I'd say mostly the the experience is like not even comparable. It's like
Mhm.
the difference between not even Worlds, because obviously Worlds Finals is gonna be different than LCS Studios, but like even from what I saw of New York, anything like that, like I would take one day at Groups New York over like 50 days of LCS here. Like it's so different, and I'm like so jealous. And I want to do. I absolutely agree with you. Like that kind of thing where it's like watching with that many people in a stadium or like a theater like that. It's unimaginably different than like normal LCS. Uh, and yeah, it's something awesome. It's sad that we won't get Worlds here for another while. Hopefully, we'll see more playoffs, road shows. We've talked to people at LCS. I know specifically me, Numiii, and David. I've talked to a bunch of people, a bunch at orgs, at Riot, at LCS, over and over about like the fan experience. and this is something we've been pushing for since like 6 months at least for me, if not more. But like that's something that hopefully we see change, because it really is like it's awesome.
I like started tearing up because like we're on video right now, and I started tearing up watching and hearing David talk about his
Me
experience because like
too.
you're experiencing it from quarters, groups, and finals in two different cities. Like that feeling, and I'm just going to reiterate at home, like being with people in a stadium, like for the same thing. We're all here for the same thing, and it's such a feeling that doesn't leave you. It lingers and it stays there and it motivates you to do more with it. So like I encourage anyone who like obviously we all went to this real life experience, but like even those who are watching online, that sense of community with like a watch party or with your friends or like on the living room TV and hearing the crowd and like that experience, don't let that leave you because that motivates you to keep going. So I want to preface our listeners for that as well. But I'm like starting to tear up, so we're gonna move to the outro. It's like if I keep talking about this, I will cry. But as we move on to the outro, let's give like a quick introduction one more time and like any shout outs you want to do. So I'll go first. I'm Numiii once again. You can find me on Twitter, NUMIII. I am not the ticketing person anymore. Now that finals and worlds is over, I am now a normal LCS super fan. But I just want to give a quick shout out just to Travis Gafford. And I say this every time and I'm so sorry, but like if it wasn't for Travis and his production team, honestly, I don't think I would have gotten to finals. And I would just want to sincerely express my gratitude to himself and his team for like letting me experience something so different. This is my first international event. I've only been to LCS for 6 months, and to see this in front of me and the opportunities I got, I'm so grateful to Travis. So he's not sponsored this episode, but I still want to say thank you, Travis Gafford and his production team. I
Yeah, we
think
didn't get
without
paid for
them,
this plug.
with I am biased, but without them, I don't think I would have gotten to finals. So I do want to. My shout out this week is for Travis. So, he's also learning what the word BFFR means. So if he ever
Oh
listens to
God.
this,
Wait, Numiii, where can people find you?
you can find me on Twitter, NUMIII, and Discord. But next,
Yeah, I'm Arsh. I'm the same person I've been every other time I've appeared on this podcast, except no dig in front of the name anymore. I made that joke at the beginning. I made that joke in every rehearsal for this, and I will make it again.
I'm
But
sorry, do I know you?
no, actually, yeah, I'm just a different person. But
It
yeah,
turns
I
out
think my shout out is to everyone I met at finals, everyone I watched with, Chime, Dunks, like meeting Licorice, Myra, Croissant, like all these people were like absolutely amazing to talk to meet, all that. Um, yeah, I mean, if I didn't say your name, you know that I just don't have time. But yeah, like it was incredible meeting people. Uh, and yeah, I hope to do that kind of thing again. I will go to every LCS finals from now on, probably.
nice. Okay, I guess I can go. Yeah, I'm Church of Danny. I know I'm not that much of a vocal person. This is my first time here, or probably the first time anyone's gonna hear my voice outside of like the few people that we play ARAMs with in this little server. But yeah, probably gonna be a little bit quieter just out of respect for Danny. But um, I don't know. I think I'm like starting to like open up my social group and, not just only talk to other concept artists, which I'm excited about. But yeah, I'm super thankful for the people that I've met here, and then um yeah, I mean, I shout out to you guys, I guess. Yeah. David?
You stole my shout out. So I'm David Szajnuk. Follow me on TikTok at David Szajnuk, SZAJNUK. It's impossible to spell. Check the description of the podcast. But shout out to NAmen and the group you guys have going. I know you've gotten shout outs already from Travis, from Emily, from many others, but it's very well deserved. Like the next generation of LCS fans are coming. And to have you guys leading the ship is amazing. They couldn't ask for any better role models. They couldn't ask for better people to have just alongside to help understand the fandom, understand the league, understand the players, and everything else around it. Keep up the great work. You guys are phenomenal.
But yeah, thank you so much for our special two guests, Church of Danny and David Szajnuk, on this episode 8 of Finals. We are the NAmen Podcast. Yeah, I hope you guys like this episode, and we'll see you next week, where we might have a very interesting special guest. Wink,
Definitely
wink, hint, hint.
definitely have a very special guest.
So please subscribe to us on Spotify. We don't have a YouTube as of right now, but yeah, I hope you guys like this episode, and we'll see you next time.